Thank you all for being here, and let's begin. So first off, Judith, we just want to start with that, beginning with what exactly is an empath, if you could speak upon that.
Yeah, so I just want to say how excited I am to be here, and the energy here is so incredible. It's so beautiful. You know, I as an empath, I'm an emotional sponge, and I tend to absorb other people's emotions or even physical symptoms or the energy of a place into my own body. But when it's, and when it's like this, it's a true pleasure. You know, it's a beautiful work environment. So I'm very grateful to be here. I'm a psychiatrist in Santa Monica, and I'm also an empath. And so I combine traditional psychiatric skills with my ability to intuit what's going on in the environment. And being an empath, somebody who is very sensitive, very intuitive, very open, but they tend to take on the stress of the world because they don't have the same filters that other people have. And so I feel everything, you know, which can be a plus and a minus. And so I wanted to write the Empath Survival Guide to give people skills how not to absorb the stress of others, you know, particularly in the work environment. If you're next to people perhaps you're uncomfortable with, how to just hold the space for them but not take it on. Because empaths take it on, and as a result, you know, I can get exhausted, or when I was a child, I couldn't go into shopping malls or crowded places because I'd go in fine, and then I'd walk out with an ache or pain or anxiety or exhaustion that I didn't have before. And I didn't realize then, as a little girl, that I was picking up the energy and the emotions of other people, that the whole phenomena of emotional contagion that can happen, that we know so much now, that, for instance, if you're in a children's ward, a baby ward in the hospital, if one baby starts crying, the rest of them start crying. You know, or if you're in a work environment and somebody, you know, has very negative energy and is a downer, it can spread to the rest of the people like a virus. And so as an empath, that's particularly intense. And so I want to say that this is a gift, and we need to learn how to manage it as well.
So I think you sort of answered part of my second question, or the second question that we've put together. But it was, how did you become involved in studying empathy? And then, because this group is very curious and science-minded, I wondered if you could speak about the science that has come out about empathy.
Yeah, the science behind empathy is fascinating. It's believed that there's a spectrum of empathy. Whereas ordinary empathy, which is so beautiful, is where you can feel something for someone else as they're going through it, but you don't actually take it on in your own body. So up higher on the spectrum are the highly sensitive people who have sensitivity to light, sound, noise, like to be alone, like to be in nature, replenish themselves by themselves rather than in crowds of people or going to parties. And then on the high end is the empath, who absorbs energy from other people and is extremely empathic. And the science behind it includes mirror neuron research, where it's thought that with people with extreme empathy, the mirror neurons, the compassion neurons of the brain, are hyperactive, where they're just working overtime, where we feel compassion for everything and everybody and the world, and it could get to be too much. But it's thought that the mirror neurons are really working overtime as compared to, let's say, a narcissist or a sociopath who have empathy deficient disorder, meaning they don't really have empathy as we know it. Their mirror neurons are thought to be hypoactive, meaning they're not really functioning at full tilt. And then there's the whole phenomena of emotional contagion, which I mentioned, is that emotions can be catchy, and we are sensitive to how people are around us. Their emotions affect us, even if we're not empaths. That somebody else's emotions, if they come into your work environment and they're a drama queen, or they're a chronic talker, or they're a victim, where they always want to talk about themselves and their victim status, it brings you down. If you're an open-hearted person, if you're open and you feel all this, your energy goes down. So it's important to understand emotional contagion, and also the concept of dopamine, where dopamine is the pleasure hormone. And it's thought that empaths need a smaller amount of dopamine to feel good than, let's say, extroverts who get their dopamine fix from going out, with big parties and big events and football games, and you get a large dopamine hit with that. But empaths get satisfied by very little interaction. For instance, as an empath, I love one-to-one interactions. I really enjoy them. But when it gets to be a lot of people, it gets overwhelming for me, as I love to connect. And then too many people on a personal level is hard for me. I speak to large groups, and that's a bit different. But on a personal level, I prefer to have small gatherings. And it could be the dopamine explanation and research, because I require very little. I get filled very easily by happiness. And I get drained if I stay in a social situation for too long. It's too much for me, because I get overstimulated, and too much is coming in too fast with sensory overload. So if you're an empath or you're a sensitive person, it's good to look at the science behind it. And it's not also the electromagnetic energy from the heart and the brain gives off information. And so we're transmitting information, and if you're sensitive, like you're an empath, you can feel all this, but the problem is empaths don't know how to manage all this. And I think if you break down the science and you begin to look at the various aspects of the science, it's very useful in terms of explaining what you're feeling and why you're feeling it.
Thank you, Judith. In relation to some of the things you have talked about with the science behind it and some of the terminologies that you've used with regards to extroverts and introverts, that is a question sort of that Wendy and I, having read the book, had talked a lot about, because in the book, it feels as if you have, given your story as an introverted empath. As some of you may know, I'm extremely extroverted, and so I'm more of an extrovert empath. And so could you talk to us a little bit about these differences in terms of, I do love going to parties, and I do love talking to people and being out there, and that fills me up, versus if I'm alone, all the energies that I've picked up tend to make me really feel just more alone. I can't get out of the loop. So can you speak on that?
Yeah, they're both introverted empaths and extroverted empaths. I happen to be introverted. What are you?
I am definitely the introverted type of empath.
Yeah, and Heather is extroverted. And most empaths are introverted, but some are extroverted. And by introverted, I mean, I like to be alone. I'm a writer, and I like to be in my room alone, with my own energy, just allowing the creative flow to happen. I enjoy that. That's like the epitome of my life experience, at that moment. But extroverts, they tend to go out more. And I go out, but I don't go out that much, and that's okay with me. I'd rather be in nature. I'd rather be in quiet, tranquil environments, or one-to-one. But you're an extroverted empath, so you go out into environments, but my guess is you need to decompress afterwards. Is that, at some point.
I think one of the things that I sleep really deeply, and I have a feeling that part of the reason that I sleep deeply is because I process it in my sleep versus out and about in the world. And I just felt that some of the things in the book talked about some things to help an extrovert empath, if any of you can relate to that, is going to meetings with other people who also experience it, because then you're amongst other people. Because that was my big thing, is I can't function to take it all in and be by myself taking it all in.
Mm-hmm. Well, it just varies. You might identify with various levels of this. And so it just depends how you process things. And I just want everyone to know, if you identify with any of this, you're not neurotic, you're not crazy, there's nothing wrong with you. It's a sensitivity level that I believe is important to develop. And certainly in massage therapy, you're feeling what's going on in other people. And so the sensitivity is there, and we need more empathy in our world today. Desperately. Places like Google, to have empathy for each other, And to make your work environment really positive and caring, I think is a wonderful thing. And to have empathy for, the world and to bring that in, is something I'm really passionate about.
Thanks, Judith. I feel, very privileged to be in this company because there is such a spirit of inclusion and respect for diversity. And I also know that I have, my own characteristics where I get frustrated or feel victimized by things that happen to me in my day. And so when I was reading, I thought, I wonder sometimes if I'm also an energy vampire. Like, do I flip between these two things? What if I'm the source of drain for somebody else? And how do I reconcile that with also being an empath? Because once I get through my mood, I'm kind of back to myself. But one of my goals for this year is meditation. And I've done a good job, and I feel like it's helping me. But I really don't want to be that to other people. So how do I work on that? And how does an empath reconcile also sometimes being the energy vampire?
It's a great question. It's a very humble question, actually, if we can all ask that. There's a chapter on the book on combating narcissists and other energy vampires. And it's important, if you're sensitive, to identify who are the drainers, especially in the work environment. You can have a lot of different kind of drainers, from the drama queen to the chronic talker to the narcissist, to the passive aggressive person. So there are many kinds of energy vampires. And yes, we can all be drainers. We can all be energy vampires. So not to think about it as, them or him or her. But when we, get into our kind of lower selves and we get, our buttons are pushed and we're triggered and we're tired and we're not in our best selves, then, we can be victims, or we can be talkers, or we can be, just people who bring others down. And so that's okay. I mean, that's part of being human, and it's great to recognize it in yourself. I mean, that's so great that you asked that question. And, it's wonderful also because you can catch yourself, with the awareness. When you start getting into those energy vampire states, you can say, okay, or if your coworker, I hope has the freedom to point it out. It's a little touchy subject, but to say, I love you, or I respect you so much. I love working with you, but you're complaining a lot today. I don't know if you have the freedom. Do you?
Well, Googlers tend to be extremely kind.
Good.
So I'm sure there are conversations like that are done, very, I don't know what the
Tactfully?
word. Tactfully, thank you.
I think that's true. People here are very kind and have a lot of, exhibit a lot of tolerance and tact. And we always need to work on feeling like we can bring up a challenging situation and discuss it in a non-threatening way with people. So
Yeah, I hope that that's the case. And because somebody who is rolling with their being an energy vampire, it can really bring down the work environment. So it's really a toxic influence. And so I feel that needs to be addressed, as you said, compassionately and lovingly. Because sometimes we don't know when we get into those states, and it can just go on and on and on. And you don't want that in a work environment. You optionally want positive energy in your work environment. You want it to be easy and fun, so your mind can just go to creative places, and really envision, the amazing things for yourself. And an energy vampire is important to identify because they could bring it down. And so to address it, not punitively, but lovingly, I hope that there's a way to do that here, and to recognize, not to get angry at the person, but that they need understanding.
Not to tell somebody they're an energy vampire, basically. So in moving on with the questions, we wanted to ask, sort of related to that, a person who may be not just in a phase in that moment as an energy vampire, but that's their personality. They're like full on complete, like a narcissist or something lacking. Neuroplasticity teaches that our brain's neural circuitry is malleable. And the studies have shown that mindfulness meditation that includes loving kindness that you talked about can rewire the brain. So is it possible that somebody who could possibly have a full-blown on low empath narcissist trait personality change with that?
It's very hard for narcissists to change. However, I just want to say narcissists can be really creative and productive and have great ideas and be very intuitive. So they're not all negative in the work environment. It's just the problem comes in personally, where you interact with them because they just think of themselves and they don't really care about what you're feeling because they lack empathy. The full-blown narcissists, who are self-absorbed, and they become cold, withholding, and punishing when you don't do things their way. So it doesn't make for a great management style. It really doesn't. And so, hopefully there are not too many here, in terms of narcissists, because it doesn't foster creativity. It shuts people off. It makes people feel small and damaged and not heard and not listened to. And it's so important if you're sensitive and you're an empath, you care. You really care about others and you don't want to be shut off. But if you do have narcissists here, just take advantage of all their strengths. As nobody's all bad. There's a Buddha and a demon inside everybody. It just depends on what we feed. We want to feed the best parts of ourselves. The most sensitive, the most loving, the most compassionate, and then understand that we can be energy vampires sometimes. We can go through a bad period. So I think with a narcissist, if you look at what they can give to a work environment and not expect them to be your best friend, there's a lot of patients who come to me have narcissistic bosses, and that's really hard because you really have to frame things in terms of how it will serve them for them to be on your side. And it's tedious, ego stroking, and it's hard for sensitive people. But if you want to have a vacation, let's say, you don't say, I'm so tired, I really need a break now. They won't give it to you. But if you say this will serve the business, then a narcissist will say, oh, okay, how? And so then it would make more sense to give you a vacation then. So ideally you don't have to do that, but in case you're ever faced with it, that's one tactic that will work.
Well, I think that leads really nicely into the next part of our questions, which really involve how do we work with these tendencies in a workplace? What are some solutions when we're faced with small personal space, lots going on, lots of distractions, and then we want to be able to be as creative as possible and work at our highest level. So what can we do as empaths to foster that?
All right, well, one thing I noticed here, Google, is the high ceilings. I mean, that helps to have a feeling of space. And it's very beautiful to me. I feel like I could breathe here. I don't feel claustrophobic. Everywhere I look, it's high ceilings. So I'm not, do you have low ceilings other places here?
Not so many, no.
Yeah, so that helps with the feeling of spaciousness. But in terms of techniques to use, I really suggest meditation. There's a 3-minute meditation where you can just check in with yourself for 3 minutes, close your eyes, focus on your heart, focus on something really positive in your life, and breathe out stress and focus on the positive. And during those 3 minutes, you can recalibrate yourself and you could come back to your center. Because part of the skill of being an empath in an environment is learning how to come back when you start to swirl, or when somebody pushes your button and you're triggered, or you're disappointed by something, or if something happens in your personal life and suddenly you go down. To recenter yourself through this 3-minute quick meditation is a form of coming back to you that a lot of people don't know how to do that. Once you swirl, they just start swirling. And so learning how to breathe, the breath is very powerful because the breath, you can breathe out stress and you can breathe in clarity or calm, peacefulness. But to breathe out stress, the breath actually carries the stress out of you, out of your body, which is what you want. So these regular meditation breaks, I really suggest, to help you feel better and to help you reconnect with your creativity. I keep coming back to that with this audience. That creativity is so important for you to be able to really play up here. And to play and to feel comfortable, you have to be in a good environment. And you mentioned that you have a close environment in some places.
That there are a lot of people in a small space.
A lot of people in a
oftentimes.
small space. How much room do you have between you?
I'm not the best person to speak to that because I work in a spacious place.
That much room? Okay. All right. That's not much room. All right. And so you need to create your own personal space. At least you have that much room. It is an open space environment? Okay. All right. That's particularly challenging for sensitive people. And so you have to make your desk your spiritual station, your energy station, however you can be comfortable there, with pictures of people. I wear the Kuan Yin around my neck, who's the goddess of compassion. She really sets a tone of compassion. Sometimes gemstones are important to put around the desk, or whatever it centers you. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be spiritual objects. It could be anything that you love, to create a circle of safety around your desk, and like a bubble of invisibility, if you feel like being invisible. And visualization is very important for that. If you have an open space environment, to visualize a protective bubble around your environment. And although you see other people and you hear them talking and they're moving, you're in your safe place. And so what you're doing is summoning your own inner power to create a visualization for yourself. You're not helpless in this environment. And when you begin to experience that, you'll feel incredible relief, so then you can focus. It's when I learned to meditate, I learned how to do it in a room where next door it was a Sunday, and they were having prayer meetings with songs. And so when I was learning how to meditate, I had a lot of external distractions, which was really helpful for me because I learned how not to be thrown off. And that's part of this path of empowering sensitivity, is how do you learn to center yourself amidst distraction and chaos, you see? And so you can look at it as a fun challenge. And I don't know if, can you hear other people talking next to you? You can hear them, all right. Are you allowed to wear earbuds here? Okay, well, sometimes that's helpful, in playing nice music. So you can use, these techniques, but most important, energetically, you want to just focus on your own energy, your own space, your own creativity, and not on somebody cracking their gum next to you. As empaths are very sensitive to that, like coughing, cracking of gum, clearing of the throat, all that, it's important to focus on yourself so that you can screen out external distractions so you could be in your best place.
So on that note, talking about the things that we can do in our workplace, like one thing that I have told clients that I know that they find their peace on weekends out in nature, I've told them, go, get a picture of that and put it in your workspace so that when you're feeling that overwhelmingness and your mind's just racing and everything's distracting you, look at that picture to sort of calm that down. And on that note, talking about the different types of empaths, you do speak of that in your book. Would you like to sort of go over a few of those for people? Because once you sort of recognize, this is what I took away from the book, what type of empath that you are, there's going to be different tools, obviously, that will work for you better than for a different type of empath.
Yeah, there are different types of empaths, and some empaths are emotional empaths, where you're especially sensitive to other people's emotions. For instance, if somebody's angry and they come into work angry, you take it on. Or if somebody's depressed, you can be sitting next to somebody and suddenly your energy is going down and you're starting to feel a little depressed, and you pick up their emotions. And so empaths are sensitive to emotions, and some are even sensitive to physical issues, where you can pick up, let's say your coworker has back pain, and suddenly your back begins to ache. So it's just something to watch out for in yourself. And then there's empaths called intuitive empaths. And these empaths are very open to their intuition, really tuned into intuition. And I personally feel, as a psychiatrist and an empath, that it's so vital to listen to that inner voice. And empaths have it, a little bit more open than other people, but everybody can connect to their intuition. And that's the still small inner voice that comes through gut feelings, or the enteric nervous system in the gut has actual neurotransmitters that convey information like the brain. So what's going on in your gut can convey information. And so as an intuitive empath, you can train yourself to listen to your gut feelings about somebody. Let's say you're hiring somebody and they look totally good on paper. They look amazing. But when you're sitting across from them, your energy is going down. Now, what is that telling you? It could be that this isn't a good match for your particular environment. And so you want to have people who are energetically harmonious. And when you hire people and when you interview people, when you're an intuitive empath, you can develop intuitive skills in terms of you look at what they present on paper, but you also can feel what's going on in them. You see, so you listen to your gut feeling, you listen to a hunch, you listen to an aha, knowing that it can be waves of goosebumps that say, yes, this person is right, this is exciting, this is going to be a great match. Or you can, feel a kind of a downward thud, or a wall or something that's unpleasant. But when you train yourself as an empath and as a human being to listen to your intuition, it can give you extra information. And so that's really essential. But what happens is sometimes people don't listen to their intuition and they second guess themselves. Particularly in a very linear environment, where you're given information but something doesn't feel right. I really encourage you to weigh that, in your relationship choices and in how you deal with your coworkers, because it will tell you, maybe I should stay away from this coworker today. Maybe they need a bit more space. And it's a gift to give them that, and to honor that. They seem to be in their own world. They seem to want to go into a cave. All right, fine, I'll give that to them. And I won't talk to them that much if possible. You see, so you can really have deep compassion for your coworkers and for others by developing this skill of intuition that many empaths have. And some of the specific types, some empaths are animal empaths. I see there's a doggy in here. That's so great. That you're allowed to bring dogs here? Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
We're a big dog culture.
You are? And empaths have a communing with animals, with dogs, with cats, with wild animals, with birds, that some feel a very deep connection to animals. And some have a deep connection to the natural world and plants. They love to have plants. They love to garden. And some have, as you said, a connection to their dream life. Where some empaths are dreamers and they can tune into their dreams to get guidance in the morning by remembering your dreams. So these are all intuitive outlets that you can really explore and play with, as a sensitive person, as opposed to being a disembodied head who's just a linear person who lives up from here up. I'm really advocating being in your mind and reasoning and in the body, listening to your intuition and your sensitivities, as you can be both. And sometimes there's a bias against men doing this. And I have a Facebook empath group, and it's over 11,000 people, and it maybe 85% women, and 15% men. So, it's harder sometimes for men. I don't know how it is. There are a lot of men in this audience, which is fantastic. If it's harder to come out and say I'm an intuitive feeling person, and I'm also really intelligent and smart and creative and grounded. So to balance everything for both men and women who are empaths.
So there was one other empath that I wanted to ask you about, and I'm also kind of looking at time and want to make sure that we leave some time for people who have questions out there. So you had spoken about being in nature. Actually, I think it was you, Heather, but it came up again when Judith was speaking. And you speak about earthing or write about earthing in your book. And I often will tell my clients after their session, you may want to take a few minutes. We're close to the beach, or find a patch of grass and take your shoes off, stick your feet in it. Can you speak to how that helps us?
That so helps us in so many ways. To get out in nature and take your shoes off and go barefoot in the grass or go barefoot on the ocean and just feel yourself, what that feels like. And just the freedom. And it often reminds you of how you were as a child, if you had the opportunity to be in nature as a child, and to reclaim that and to just go play and feel what's coming up, the electron exchange with the earth. I mean, I have very strong feelings about the earth and preserving our environment and how we connect to our environment and how our bodies are intimately connected to the earth. So, of course, we're going to feel if the earth is harmed. And so the mission of helping the earth needs to be number one, above all things, as far as I'm concerned. And, it's difficult for empaths in this day and time with the support of the earth not really being there in our social environments. It's just devastating, for me when I hear about certain ravages of the earth. However, you can go out and connect. You see, people aren't trained to connect to the earth. And if you stay in an office for too long, or it's not actually an office, it's an open air environment. But if you stay closed up too long, if you stay at your computer too long, you can get kind of sealed off from the world. And you want to connect. You want to take a break from the computer and your work and go out. You're so close to the beach here. You could take a walk and go down to the ocean and see all the seagulls and, get into your child again. I know you're adults and you work at Google and you have very, important jobs and you really are playing a role in bettering the world. But it's good to also let that down, and go and play. If you can, just go and connect to the earth. And you could lie on the earth. You could climb a tree. You could meditate by a tree. No, but to have that playfulness, empaths tend to get overly serious. And life is short, so you want to have as much playfulness as you possibly can to remind yourself of that, because you deserve it. I kind of live with the philosophy of this is the day I'm given, the eternal now, and I don't know about tomorrow necessarily. I know about today, and I want to make it the best possible. And that isn't just work, work, work all the time, though I've always been a workaholic. I've always loved work. When I was a little girl, my report card, the teacher said, I need to take the pressure off myself. I'm 7 years old. My parents didn't give me that. I was born that way. And so, it's important for me to find the balance, because I could get lost in writing and patience and what's, in the internet, going on Google and Googling things all the time. And so it's important.
Don't forget dance. Dance is a good way too, to sort of get your body moving, so you're in your body.
Yeah, but just moving and, being in the body is an important way to balance. And, but I just want to acknowledge this environment, how creative it is. And, what an opportunity you have here, as employees of Google, to really, create and change the world. It feels like, changing the world is here. It just feels so important to be here.
So you brought up children, and I know there's a section in your book about that. And I guess part of changing the world is also making sure that we influence our children to be good human beings as they impact the world themselves. So
Absolutely. It's so important to support the sensitivities in our children, as they're going to save the world. They need to be raised in a way where, you look at them and you say, you're sensitive, you're open, and that's beautiful. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. And just because you may not want to be on the football team and you may want to go into the forest and meditate, that makes you unique and beautiful. Where you don't have to fit these children, these sensitive children or indigo children, these new children that have a certain consciousness coming into the world. You don't want to fit them into some arbitrary mold. You want to really help them and support them. And a lot of times as children, you might not have been supported. in your sensitivities or intuition. And that hurts, because I know as an empath child, and I had 2 physician parents and 25 physicians in my family, so I came from this long lineage of scientific thinkers, and I was a feeler. I would feel things, I would know things, I would, process it differently than a traditionally scientific person, although I did go through medical school and I conquered, that to balance both the intuitive and the scientific, but it wasn't how I was born. And so I've had to reclaim that as a psychiatrist and as an adult. And that's what I'm inviting you all to do, is to be as linear as you want, to be as inventive in your minds, but also, reclaim your sensitivity and your openness and your playfulness, and your connection to the earth. We can be everything.
I love that.
Yeah.
Shall we
Yeah.
pass around the
So we
ball?
do have about 10 minutes or so. If people have questions, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll be glad to throw you.
Are you good at catching? I'm not usually.
Whoa. Even that's so creative, where she threw the mic in a little box over to him.
Hi. I had a question. I noticed in your bio it mentioned energy awareness. And through my process, understanding the human energy system and how to work with it has been really valuable for me. I did it through medical Qigong. I'm just curious what kind of energy awareness
Hold that up,
techniques you
please, a
use.
little bit.
I'm just curious what kind of energy awareness techniques you use in your practice.
Can you repeat that for me?
So he wanted to know what kind of energy awareness techniques that Judith uses in her practice, and he found it through, was it Qigong?
Qigong, yeah.
Qigong.
Qigong is a wonderful way to center your energy. It's a movement where you center your energy and you feel the universal energies in your body, and that's a beautiful energy technique. You could even do Qigong here, to go out somewhere and practice, here and just do a few movements. What I use in my practice is that I teach people to meditate, and I also work on them energetically, where I put my hands over their various chakras to balance it and teach them to open up their hearts.
Shameless plug, we offer Tai Chi, which has Qigong in it, elements in it, weekly. So
Yeah, one way or another.
So I brought an instructor weekly and you can join us at the LAX Tai Chi group in emails, and it's Mondays from 4:30 to 5:30. There is a cost because I've brought in the instructor, but we meet over in the Bin 5 courtyard or inside the bunker when it's cold.
That's fantastic.
A lot of people who are not empathic, right? They might be kind, they might be changing the world, they might not be necessarily narcissistic. Is there some tool, some kind of Myers-Briggs personality test kind of thing, so that they recognize that they are not empathic?
Yes.
So, and if there is one, and then what do we do with it? Once we know that the person is not empathic, what are the actions apart from meditation can a person take to sort of develop that?
That's a great question. How do you identify if somebody doesn't have empathy, and then how do you deal with it? Mm-hmm. Okay, the best way is to provoke a small conflict. Because if you provoke a conflict, you can see how they deal with it. As if they have... Why are you laughing?
I hate conflict.
You hate conflict.
So I'm going to create that. That would be really hard for me.
A little conflict. Let's say they say, let's meet today at 10. And you say, well, I can't do it at 10, but I'll do it at 11. Even just a little thing like that. Somebody who doesn't have empathy is going to become cold, withholding, judgmental, punishing, and change their very nice personality into a different one. And so narcissists who don't have empathy don't like it when you don't do things their way. All right. Have you met people like that?
No, I just meant to say that maybe there's another classification out there, which is basically kind people, not narcissistic.
Kind people.
But they are not empathic. They don't have the mirror neurons, as to say. They do not understand what are you going through. So they cannot relate to you in general. They are sympathetic, but not empathic.
All right, they're very kind people, though. They're not
but
narcissists.
they are not. They cannot understand what you're going through, your emotions,
And
your
this-
emotional state.
and this
Let's say
is-
you come in and you look very sad and you don't want to work, but let's say he's a manager or somebody else, but he doesn't recognize that, and you're thinking, why does he not recognize that? So they are lack empathy. Just they don't know that they're trampling over somebody.
Yes, let me make the distinction of lacking empathy versus someone just being in their heads. Because sometimes people are self-absorbed or in their heads and they're not tuning in emotionally
and that's
to
when
you.
it happens.
But that doesn't necessarily make them a narcissist, and they could be the kindest person, but they can also be out of touch with their feelings.
Yes, exactly. That they could be. When I see a lot of people in general are very kind, sympathetic, want to change the world. When it comes to personal relationship, because they are very smart and in their brains,
Right.
They don't tune in to their empathic centers, or they do
Right.
not have developed empathic center. So they just relate to your brain.
Yes,
So-
but they're kind people.
The
and
kind people, they don't want to harm anybody. They don't want to but they do not understand their actions affect other human beings.
Okay, do you find that that's common?
That's common.
Really? Okay, well
That they are not narcissists necessarily.
Right. Well, I mean, that leaves an opening on emotional training and intuitive training for people here. You know, it's something that's really important to train in a safe environment. And if that's the case a lot of times, it's something to think about. But in terms of your expectations of them, you could come in with a broken heart and they probably won't see it.
Yeah. And
And
it happens a lot.
to not take that personally.
Yeah, I understand. But like, is there a way? Like, I was thinking more in terms of in Myers-Briggs test, you go take an online test and it tells you what letters you are, ENTP, ISTP, whichever might be the case. So is there an online test I can go and say, hey, you're not empathic. Your empathy is out of 1 to 100 is 30 or 20.
Okay.
So that we know, and we can say to each other, oh, we are 20, 100, so we know each other in some objective way. I
In
know
an
it's like
objective way.
Yeah.
All right, that would be, and you would want to pass that around and have everyone take it?
Yeah, that would be the Google way of doing it.
All right, well, I mean, there's certainly a self-assessment test at the beginning of this book with 20 questions that people can take and determine where they are on the empathy scale. But, you know, there could be other ways to do it, too, in terms of creating more formal tests and scores. But that's a good idea. But I think the goal would be really to help people recognize.
Recognize, right?
Yeah, because the more empathy you have, the better your work environment is going to be because you're going to feel safe. You don't want to ooze it. You don't want to overdo it, you know, because sometimes empaths can be, you know, help too much. And they give too much. And they want to be too compassionate. And they're looking at you in the eyes too deeply, so it feels intrusive. You know, that kind of thing. You don't want to become that, but you want to become smart, intuitive, caring, and blend it all. And that takes some training sometimes to do it. And hopefully the book will do it, but trainings can help.
But first, if you recognize it, at least you can know that this person is at least like that. It's okay. You know, we need to be inclusive.
Absolutely. But, you know, also to recognize that being a good person is the best thing anyone could do. And even though, you know, they might lack other, you know, abilities, if you're a good person, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. You know, it really is. So to recognize that in each other and, you know, to affirm that, you know, namaste, I respect the spirit within you. You know, to be able to say that to each other, even, you know, with all your faults. You know, we have tons of faults, all of us. We're not perfect. But if we do the best we can and we're loving people, you know, give people credit where credit is due. And when you can affirm that in others, the whole environment, in the work environment, can just increase the vibration, increase the frequency when you do that, as opposed to looking at all the negatives in someone. It's much easier to look at the negatives, you know, and criticize them and what they're doing wrong. But the shift in consciousness in terms of awareness of empathy is trying to see the best in people, you know, not their worst. You want to bring out the best in people.
When we talk about empathy, normally we talk about social with other people. So I have a kind of separate question, a little different. here I'm an engineer. I think lots of other engineers, and even Judith yourself, you said you like to work, like writing by yourself. Sometimes I feel the stress actually from the work, not with interacting with other people. When you have something difficult, something you don't understand for a while, especially later of the day, you kind of tired, your cognitive capability tends to be down. And my personal experience, sometimes in that situation, I started to have self-doubt, and it's kind of become a downward spiral. And that negative energy I can bring with me home, even though I'm already out of work, I still think about it. But maybe after a night, the next day, I looked at it again, I can figure it out. It seems so simple. So what can you suggest to do to prevent, just to bring the negative frustration out of work when you want to not think about it at that time?
A very good question. How do you not take the work energy home, basically? And you mentioned self-doubt.
Yes.
Did you mention self-doubt?
Yeah, because, I can't figure this out. Maybe I was not good enough.
All right. Well, I'm a big believer in affirmations. And so it's important to really affirm every day what you did well. And at the end of the day, you can make that a ritual to just say, what did I do well today? What did I contribute? And it could be the tiniest thing. It could be a big thing. It doesn't matter. But instead of, the self-doubt, when I talk about the demon and the Buddha inside, the self-doubt comes from more the demon side, where you have to work with it. Everybody has self-doubt. We all have self-doubt. But when you affirm, I did this well today, I did that well today, and I was breathing today, I was walking today, I came to work, I had a day of life, really. I mean, you could just always get back to that, to affirm that, and also to have a closure meditation when you are ready to leave work, to actually sit, close your eyes, breathe, center yourself, say thank you for this opportunity of work today, and now I'm leaving. And so to have an official ritual of closure and to let go of what happened at work. And that will help you. When I'm finished with my patients, usually I forget about it. I go on to the next thing, unless there's something in particular that I need to think about a little bit more. But I go on. I'm 100% present when I'm working, like with here, I'm 100% present. But when I go on, I want to grab the next moment, and inhabit the next moment. So it's good as a sensitive person to be present in the moment and then keep moving. It's like the warrior. You make your yell and then you move, and that's it. And so, that's important to think about, to be in the moment. And how do you be in the moment? Now, you can have a mantra even, let it be, I'm being in the now, and to bring your mind back, because we have control over our thoughts, our attitudes, and our mind. And so when we go into self-doubt, you go, self-doubt, I know you. All right, instead, I'm going to breathe, I'm going to focus on my heart, and I'm going to look at what I did well. And let's say I need improvement in something, I will work on that. And we all, are constantly works in progress. And so to have a lot of compassion for yourself every day and what you go through, we all go through so much. As a psychiatrist, I know well how much we all go through. And so just, give people a break, see the best in them, and, try and be empathic for what they go through, even if it's not something maybe you can relate to. But if you're empathic and your heart goes out, that's a good thing. It's really a beautiful thing to relate to one another in that way.
Hello. Kind of along those same lines, I find what's really emotional draining for me is being constantly connected via my phone, or social media, things like that. Do you find that it's important for, especially for sensitive people, to have that time to disconnect, maybe have a day without their phone? Is there tips and tools that you'd recommend?
I think it's important to have a technology fast and not go on social media and turn off your phone and leave your phone at home and go for a walk on the beach so that you're not tethered to the phone. I mean, even in the gym, sometimes I bring my phone and I put it on the, the treadmill, and I have to talk to myself. Just leave it in the locker. Don't bring it. Your world can exist, for a short period of time without that phone. But, it's very addictive technology, and so you have to really make that extra effort to say no to it. And it makes me feel so much better when I'm not near anything. There's a monastery that we go to sometimes in retreat, Tassajara Monastery. They don't even have electricity. They have no, cell phone coverage. They have no electricity, kerosene lamps. So you're forced into, a beautiful retreat of, without technology. So I think that makes you better when you come to work, when you have those breaks. As if you keep checking and checking and checking, it puts you in a zombie-like state, and that's not in the body. And so to put it down a little bit and go dance, I think dancing, what you mentioned, or movement, any kind of movement, the qigong, movement, dancing, walking, exercising, looking up at the stars and the sun, just replenishing is very important without technology.
I just want to add one thing, and that is when we talked about the children and what we're teaching our kids that are our future, is we're teaching them this importance of how much our phones are. And they will say things, what do you mean you lost your phone? What are you going to do? Like even they, as young as 5, are picking up on our attachments to our phones. So
I had my daughter very worried one night because my husband went out for a walk and didn't have his phone. And I thought, oh, this is a day without a phone. I think it's a new G to G class.
And thank you both, Heather and Wendy, for having me here. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.